So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night to the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Fair Play, the erotic thriller, which is currently streaming on Netflix. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to just simply listen to your podcasts, well, you can with this one, audibly at Night to the Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night to the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into this. Fair Play. So this is a relatively new erotic thriller streaming on Netflix, as I've already mentioned, and it's starring Phoebe Dienver, I might be mispronouncing her name, and apologies if I am, and Unengaging in leading roles alongside Rich Summers, which many people might know from Mad Men, and he also had a small role in The Office at one point, in The American Office I should say, and Eddie Marsan in supporting roles. You know, Rich Summers and Eddie Marsan have supporting roles in this film, and I really like Eddie Marsan. Whenever he pops up in anything, I actually really enjoy him. He's one of those actors which has a certain presence. Same with Unengaging. I may not have loved Solo: A Star Wars Story, in which he played young Han Solo, but I did enjoy him in it. And that said a lot, because I think Solo was such a missed opportunity. I think it was just, well, not to put it lightly, rubbish. But I did enjoy him in it. And he was one of the reasons, if not the biggest reason, that I was interested in this film, because I'm reviewing it quite late. I was late to watching this film because it came out when I was away. I can't remember why, but I think I was busy at the time. And, yeah, I was away when it came out. I just remember why now. I'm not going to say why because nobody really cares. But the point I'm making is I was busy when this film came out on Netflix initially. So I haven't had the chance to get around to watching it yet. It's been on my watch list, but I hadn't had the chance until this morning. I checked this film out this morning. And I was interested in the film, as I've already said, because of Unengaging, who I am a fan of. I like him as an actor. He has this unique presence every single time he's in a film. Not only did he play young Han Solo well, he was actually really good in Cocaine Bear, and he was also really good in Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers film, which I must admit I wasn't huge on, but I did like him on. But I did like him in, should I say. And another reason I was interested in this film was because of the trailer. Honestly, this is the power of a trailer. When a trailer looks good and looks fantastic, and when a trailer grabs your attention, it can get you really excited for something, or it can get you very intrigued into something. And that's what happened with the trailer for Fair Play, with the trailer for this film. I watched it and I was like, I clicked to watch on YouTube and I was like, oh, I don't know if this one's going to be for me. And then I remember halfway through the trailer thinking, well, you've got to watch this now and review it on this channel. You know, it looked great. And even though I haven't been able to watch it over the however many weeks it has been since it first came onto Netflix, I've been hearing all this positive buzz surrounding it. A lot of great reviews. You know, I think the Times gave it 4 stars, which is saying something. So a lot of this interested me into seeing the film. And the Google plot synopsis for Fair Play for this film goes as follows. An unexpected promotion at a cutthroat hedge fund pushes a newly engaged couple's relationship to the brink. And that's basically everything you need to know about Fair Play through the Google plot synopsis. And honestly, here's what I think about this film. I think it's fine. It didn't really grab me, and at the same time, I didn't really find it entertaining. And I liked what it said. I think there's some very interesting parts in the film, and some very interesting ideas in the film. The way it tackles workplace toxicity, and the way it tackles sexism and misogyny in the workplace is done well to a degree, although I must admit I've seen another film do it lot better, and I'll get onto that a bit later in this podcast. But I liked the way it tackled certain touchy ideas, shall we say. I mean, I don't think they're touchy, but they seem to be touchy with some other people, and I do think they're important to talk about, and I like the way this film tackled those ideas. I think the lead two performances are great. You know, they honestly carried quite a bit of the film for me. I must admit, I didn't really care about the lead two characters. That being said, Old Nanowike and Phoebe Denver do a very good job with the performances, what they have been given, and I liked the supporting characters. And when I say like the supporting characters, I liked hating them. You know, Rich Summers and Eddie Martin's characters, I hated those characters, but those characters I like to hate. In fact, I love to hate them. They are nasty in this film, and they, you know, Rich Summers and Eddie Martin play horrible people in this film, but I also enjoyed hating their characters. Every single time they're on screen, I was captivated by them, more so than I was by the main two leads. And I do think this is not a badly made film. It's directed by, just get her name up here, it's written and directed, should I say. It's written and directed by Chloe Dumont. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that name. This is her first full-length feature debut, as far as I can tell. She's directed some other television shows, episodes of television shows in the past, like Billions, but this is her first time directing a full-length feature film, and I think she does a good job. I mean, yeah, the director could have had more style, but it's not a bad first time. You know, it's not a bad film directed from a first-time full-length feature director, if you get what I mean. I think she does a good job, and I do think that at times the film does have those erotic moments which you want from an erotic thriller. Although I will say I think this film leans more into the thriller side of everything, and it leans more into the sexism and toxicity side of the workplace in its themes. I don't know if I'd necessarily call this an erotic thriller. The reason I titled this podcast, the reason I put in the title of this podcast, erotic thriller, and the reason I keep referring to this film as an erotic thriller is because when you look it up on Google, that's what it's tagged under. It says erotic thriller / drama. That's why I keep referring to it as an erotic thriller. But I think it's really just a thriller about sexism in the workplace, if I'm being completely honest. I think it's a thriller about, I think it's a thriller about sexism. That's what I really think it is. And I like the fact that Phoebe Denver is pretty much, I mean, you get some of the very small parts from females in the film. You get some other, small parts from women later on in the film. But Phoebe Denver is pretty much the only female character in this film, in this almost 2-hour film. And she holds her own. And I really liked, it started to sink in as the film went on. I really liked how the film tackled all this stuff with narcissism and how everybody in this workplace is narcissistic, or the men are narcissistic, should I say, and how we are focused in on Phoebe Denver's character because she's the only woman in the workplace. That didn't really click in until about halfway through the film, if you get what I mean. The way that was done, and Phoebe Denver holds well in this film, and it was an uncomfortable watch, and it did make me feel uncomfortable at times, and I think that's intentional. I think that works. My problem with the film, though, and the reason I think it's fine, even so I do think it's got a lot of merit, is because I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't really care about what's going on. And if you ever had one of those films where you're sitting there and you're watching it and your mind starts to go elsewhere. That's what happened with that's what happened with me when I was watching Fair Play. It had its moments. I'm not going to say it didn't, and I don't think it's a terrible film, but about 40 minutes into it, my mind started to wander elsewhere, to the point that I just got up and did something else for like 10 minutes. Because I just didn't want to watch the film for the next 10 minutes. I just thought about doing something else, and I went to go and do that other thing. And that shows you how little this film grabbed me. It definitely has... I was about to say it definitely has its intense moments in the third act, but it actually doesn't. Honestly, another big problem in this film is the third act, the big climactic act, the finale of this film, feels like one overblown EastEnders episode. Even to the point that I expected Danny Dyer to come in and go, "Oh, you sleeping with my wife?" You know, I can't do a Danny Dyer accent, whatever to say in my life, and that was just utterly embarrassing then, was it? Me trying to do Danny Dyer, but you get the point I'm making. I was watching this third act of the film going, this is like EastEnders. It's just like one big overblown version of EastEnders, and I don't really care about anything because I don't care about the characters. I didn't really believe in the main romantic relationship. You see these characters having sex, you see them loving each other up, great. But the thing is, I want to see more of them outside their apartment and outside the workplace. I want to see them actually properly getting along, and I know that might be the point, but I want to see more of these characters individually. Also, I wanted to see them by themselves, away from each other. Yeah, I wanted to see them away from each other. I wanted to see them, I don't know, with family, because we keep having Phoebe Denver's character's mother call her up throughout the film in various stages of the film, and I want to see more of that relationship. I wanted to see what these characters' upbringing was like, because they start acting out, and it comes a bit out of nowhere. I mean, it does and it doesn't, you know. I can see where a lot of the anger from the characters stems as the film goes on, but it almost felt like something happened early in their lives, and we've missed that part of the narrative. I was watching this going, there's something there that I'm just missing with that character, and I didn't really believe in the main romantic relationship. I didn't. I think Old Nannerike and Phoebe Denver did their best job in trying to make you believe in that relationship. Again, they give all good performances for what they've given, but I don't think there's much substance there. So much of the film for me felt superficial. I don't know if there's much substance underneath the characters, and if I'm being honest, underneath the story. You know, as I already mentioned, it does tackle toxicity and sexism and misogyny in the workplace quite well. But I think that the Kitty Green film, The Assistant, does that a lot better, if I'm being completely honest. I think The Assistant is more subtle, it's more unsettling, and it makes you more angry. And it's not an overblown film like this. There's no overacting like there is in the third act of this film. It's just you're watching somebody in The Assistant who is basically, although it's never said out loud in that film, it's never actually properly stated, but in The Assistant you're watching somebody who's basically Harvey Weinstein's assistant. And that film tackles sexism and toxicity in the workplace, I think in a much more effective way. I don't think this film is as effective as it wants to be, and it isn't as subtle, and that's what was great. That was what was so good about The Assistant. It was subtle, and it caught you off guard with what was happening because of its subtleties early on in the story, if you get what I mean. In this film, you didn't have those subtleties. There's a lot of characters looking at each other angrily, or looking at each other in a really annoyed fashion, and I'm like, okay, I get the point, you're annoyed with each other, but make it more subtle, because the camera is literally focused on these characters looking unhappy, and, you know, Old Nannerag does a great unhappy facial expression. There's so many moments in the film where he looks angry and the lighting around him, it just works fantastically, but I didn't care so much, and I didn't feel as angry as I wanted to, because I didn't have those subtle moments where it really showed you how mean these people were in the workplace, and how mean Old Nannerite's character was, or how mean Phoebe Denver's character was. And that's another thing. I wasn't really sure who to side with in this film. I wasn't sure I was meant to side with Old Nannerite at some point, and at some point I wanted to side with Phoebe Denver's character, but then Phoebe Denver's character would do something, and I'm like, that's not great. And then Old Nannerite would do something, I'm like, that's not great. And again, I understand that might be on purpose, but I did want to say to the filmmakers, choose somebody to side with. Please just choose somebody to side with, because I'm not sure, even to the point that the final scene, and I quite liked the final scene, but even to the point of the final scene, I wasn't sure what to feel though. Actually, I take it back, I didn't like the final scene, because as soon as the final scene started, I was like, oh, I can see what's going to happen here. I can see what's going to happen here. No spoilers. I won't spoil the film in case people haven't seen it yet. But as soon as that final scene started, I was like, oh, yep, I can see what's about to happen here. Right, so this is an add-on. One thing I just want to say here on the topic, I never really believed in them being a couple, is that I actually found both characters to be unlikable as well. You know, that whole thing I was saying, which I wasn't sure what characters to side with. That's because I didn't really like either character. The part of the film where I thought, actually, oh, no, it's not too bad. Oh, no, wait, he is. Oh, Phoebe Davidson's character's not too bad. Oh, but then she's doing that. You know, I wasn't sure which character I was meant to side with, and I didn't think either character was particularly likeable. And I didn't really feel that the film was engaging. I think the most engaging part of the film is the two supporting characters played by Rich Summers and Eddie Marsan. You know, he's one of the characters you like to hate. I think they're the most engaging part of the film. I think the story isn't as engaging as it wants to be. I don't think the directing, and I hate to say this because again, it's a directorial debut. I just don't think the directing is as engaging as it could be. I don't think the storytelling is as engaging as it could be. And you know, I get what the film is trying to do. I really do, and there's definitely merits in the film as what he's spoken about. But it didn't get under my skin enough. It didn't get under my skin. It didn't shock me quite as much as I wanted it to. There are some shocking parts of the film, definitely. There are some parts of the film which make you feel uneasy, certainly. But I wanted to feel more angry at the end of this film, like I did at the end of my viewing of The Assistant. But I didn't. And parts of the film feel uneven. And I don't think it needs to be almost 2 hours. I mean, it's not 2 hours, it's like an hour 55 minutes. But again, my mind started to wander. And that's never a good thing with a film. And also, the film is set in this corporate company that I didn't really care about, to be honest. I didn't care about all this stuff in the company in the film. Yeah. And it feels mostly superficial. I really wish this film worked for me and had the same effect on me as The Assistant did, where I wanted to stand up at the end and punch out all the people who were nasty to the main character at the end of the film. But I didn't feel that with Fair Play. I didn't feel that. And I didn't feel that the story had enough draw, and I didn't really care about the business side of everything, and I just don't think it had quite enough substance as a whole for me to really say that this was a properly good film. I don't think it's a bad film, really. I don't think it's that bad, but I also don't think it's that good. It's just fine, you know. It has its moments, but I was really disappointed by it. I was, yeah. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Fair Play, I'm going to say that it's a 4.5 out of 10. I should say, if you like the film, that's great. I don't want to take that away from you whatsoever. You know, there's plenty of films I've seen over however many years, or ever since I've been watching films, that I've liked and no one else has liked. And so, just because I dislike this doesn't mean you shouldn't. And I can see some people watching this and really getting something out of it and feeling angry by the end. And I would also say that if, you know, if this film has interested you on Netflix and you haven't got around to watching it yet, for some reason, I would recommend it. And again, it has its moments, and it's not a badly made film. I don't think it is. But I think it should have been so much better. You know, the trailer made this film look like it was going to be a constant, riveting thrill. The trailer made this film look like it was going to be a constantly riveting thriller for the 2 hour runtime, and it wasn't. I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, I actually found the first 2/3 of this film to be quite dull. And I really struggled to get into it. And I hate to say this because it's going to be a really mean comment, but I'm going to say it because I'm thinking it. I'm not surprised it's a straight streaming film. I don't know if it had any kind of theatrical release. I don't know if it did. But I'm not surprised that it's a straight to streaming film. Because it wasn't gripping enough. It wasn't as intense as it should have been. And I really... Oh, God. I really just didn't get into that much. It's got a lot of merit, and I think a lot of the themes it brings up in the film, are important conversations to have. But I think this system is a better film that tackles those themes, though. And I think that this film isn't subtle enough, and I think it also drags, and, you get the point I'm making. It just didn't work for me. And as I've titled this podcast today, Fair Play, for me, was a lacklustre erotic thriller without enough subtlety. And that is why I think the film is fine. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Fair Play, I'm going to say, as I've already said, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for the podcast for today. If you have seen Fair Play, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you loved it, and if you did, that is great. I do not want to take that away from you whatsoever. And if you did love it, let me know why in the comment section below, and let me know why I'm wrong. I'd love to hear some varying thoughts on this film, and maybe you feel something to me, and if you do, let me know why in the comment section below as well. And I just want to briefly apologise for this review. I don't know how this review has turned out today. I don't know how this podcast has turned out, because I am operating on about 4 hours sleep, 4 or 5 hours sleep, which is not the amount of sleep I usually have. So apologies if this podcast hasn't turned out the best. But if you have stayed watching or listening to this point, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.